let this shit slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back. Get your lick back. If a nigga owe you something, ain't no chit chat. Better stay up out the way, don't get your issue splat. Stop letting this shit slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back. I feel like I'm JX. J-Way. I'm a perfectionist. Adderall got me restless. I'm gone. Run with a wild crew, they get reckless. Young boy, come up off that neck. Into the trends. See Ali be the band.
Good morning. We are back with another episode of Corner to Copa. We are just 4 days away from the official opening day is the 26th. Opening game is the 25th, so that's on Wednesday. It's time to preview. It's time to preview the Tigers season officially. Coach, how you feeling right now?
Man, it's been a whirlwind last week and a half around here. World Baseball Classic was I thought awesome from a totality standpoint. Pool play had some crazy games. Italy went, I think, further than anyone would have thought, and obviously Venezuela coming out on top was one of the longer odds to win it. We got a lot of touch on here. We got some other playoffs going on with our local team, college teams, March Madness, our Broncos in the hockey tournament here starting next week. I think they have their selection show today later on, so they'll figure out where they're at along with Michigan State. Obviously, Spartans, Wolverines, basketball moving on to the Sweet 16 next weekend. So, and the Pistons with a nice win too. I know you were covering without no Cade toppling the Warriors. So, and the Wings are hanging in there, man. So we're white knuckling it right now as we enter MLB opening day.
Absolutely. A lot of stuff going on. And as you mentioned, the World Baseball Classic, which we got an opportunity to see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of representation from the AL Central. The Royals had Zerpa and Bobby Witt and Michael Garcia and Pasquantino and Caglione. That's a couple of guys from the Italian team. But ultimately, Venezuela prevailed, which had some representation from the Tigers. You got Gleyber Torres, you got Kiter Montero, Emmanuel De Jesus, as well as a couple former guys like Miguel Cabrera and Vmart as well. Very exciting. They prevailed over the USA 4-2, a big hit from Eugenio Suarez. It would have been nice to see him be a representative of a Tiger all over again, but it is what it is. We won't get into that. But overall, what was your takeaway? It was obviously it was electric. There was a lot of excitement, and they Venezuela took it very serious. A lot of those players are wearing their jerseys and their hats and their T-shirts all over the place because you get an opportunity, some bragging rights for the next 4 years to say, we were crowned the best team.
Yeah, and what's nice about that too is you get some of these young kids. There was a 17-year-old from either PR, DR, or Venezuela that was touching 99 to 100 at 17 years old. And I don't even think he was an actual signed prospect. So that's kind of the nice added bonus for a lot of these major league scouts is they get to see some young kids that perhaps weren't on anyone's radar just because they need to fill some roster spots. So overall, from a high level, obviously Italy was very impressive. Their pitching was, I think, probably the most unexpected thing out of all of it, honestly, to get as far as they did. And obviously, popping US a solid right hook and then a knockout blow up, 8-0 before USA started to make a comeback. But it just speaks to how much pride a lot of the Latin countries and Korea, Chinese Taipei, Czechia had that electrical engineer who looked like they just signed him off the street the week before, and dude pitched a gem in his finale in Japan. They gave him a standing ovation, which was really cool to see. But as far as USA, a lot of the big bats were there early in pool play. And then guys like Harper, Schwarber, Judge, the last 3 games heading into the knockout stage completely fell on their face. I know Harper had the 2-run homer in the 8th, but aside from that, those three guys didn't do a whole lot of much when they needed. The pitching staff was great. Bullpen, for the most part, was okay. A couple of rough outings from Keller, I think it was. Vest made a nice appearance. The only one he got. Bednar was pretty good. So it was just not enough run production when the starters, for the most part, were doing pretty well. We can go 10 rounds with the Scuba thing. I think we've talked about that to death offline for a while. So, I'll say the entrance for that game with him getting, Larkin to get some of the USA hockey jerseys, I was like, let's not counter spring chickens yet, but guys, we still have to win this game.
Yeah.
So, and that whole thing was just weird in itself, like him coming back and leaving Detroit again. And I thought it took away, honestly, from some of Lakeland and what they were trying to do, because it dominated the headlines nationally, at least. I don't think we cared as much, but it was just awkward. The last 6 months, the arbitration, everything with him has just been awkward. I'm just ready to go for opening day right now. But in terms of individual players, Mikhail Garcia, very impressive. Bryce Terang, Brewer second baseman, Team USA, solid. Defense, hitting. Gunnar Henderson had the better bat, but obviously Bobby Witt's the better defender at short. Those guys were solid. And we noted early offline, Cal Raleigh, nothing. Not a single hit the entire tournament and rode the pine the last 3 games. I think it's safe to say he's in for some massive regression for the Mariners this year, and we're here for it. So that benefits the Tigers in that aspect.
Yeah, and to top off all that, he had the awkward situation with Rosa. What's his name? Rosarena.
Randy Rosarena, yeah.
Randy. We'll call him Randy. But yeah, with the shaking hand thing. So that that should make for some interesting headlines, especially Julio Rodriguez. I don't know if he was involved in any of the handshaking, but that's another member of the World Baseball Classic. So, just a little, just something to keep an eye on in Seattle as they try to make another run of the World Series. But yeah, we're certainly here for a little bit of a regression from Cal, just on the aspect of them being competitors of ours. But let's move past the World Baseball Classic. We are on to actual baseball. We got some legitimate Major League Baseball coming up real soon. For those that didn't get a chance to watch the game yesterday, I did want to give you a little recap of that. We had Framber Valdez on the mound, and he went 7 innings yesterday. Not a lot of pitches, really. I think he got up out of there with under 80, but he was very efficient. He sprinkled, I think, about 7 hits throughout that time. 7 hits throughout that time, had 4 strikeouts, and gave up 1 earned run, which ended up being on a squeeze play. So it wasn't even like a super legitimate, hitting opportunity. But yeah, a good game overall for them. The Tigers won 3-1. A couple hits from Javi Baez, a 2-run double by Matt Vierling being the big hit in the game. But yeah, I was impressed by Valdez. I've been impressed with him the entire spring. He finally walked a batter. He went quite a few outings without walking any batters, but he's a guy that's going to I think he can be susceptible to hard contact, but pretty much all of it is going to be on the ground. The shining defensive play in that game was a diving catch by Kevin McGonigal, which he turned into a double play. This was at third base. So, McGonigal has played all over the infield, pretty much has played every single day the last 2 weeks or so. And it's pretty evident that, not only is he one of the better bats, but I think that his glove is going to play all over the infield. Yeah, I mean, it's going to, especially when you got when you got guys like Framber Valdez that are going to throw a lot of strikes, and they're going to put the ball in play. You're going to want to have your best defensive player out there. And, it just checks off yet another box as far as, covering, just what he can bring to the table, whether it's, being a good contact hitter, having professional at bats, but also playing his position well, whether it's anywhere from second base to third base. So, very encouraging thing. We all pay attention to, the moonshot home runs and all that from Kevin McGonigal, but he's just an all-around great baseball player, and it's really exciting to see. So yeah, moving on to the final roster. We do not yet have a full idea of what the roster is, but there are certain things that we do know about it. For one, I know you saw that Austin Slater's his opt-out has been triggered, and we've granted his release. Well, I talked about a magic date. I think it was March 19th was the actual date, but we had a couple days to decide whether or not we were going to add Austin Slater to the 40-man roster. We have decided to not add him to the 40-man roster, so he will try to find a major league contract elsewhere. I'm not surprised. Any thoughts about that situation? He definitely had a pretty solid spring, though.
Yeah, and looking at some of his numbers here, I think he had a pretty good middle part of the spring, and I will take him with a grain of salt when I say he cools off, because obviously, they started trimming some of their roster and NRIs down, and then he had guys going for the WBC and whatnot. So I mean, he had a respectable spring. I don't know if he'll get a major league contract. If he does it, because I don't really know what his years of service is. I got to imagine he probably still has options, like years of arbitration left, so he would have two-way options. So I could see someone picking him up and adding him on the 40. Yeah, I mean, he had a little bit of pop. Let's see if I can try and find him on here.
A couple home runs, I think.
Yeah, he definitely drove in a handful of runs, showed some nice power. I mean, I didn't hear anything about him having any issues fielding. So from what I can gather, that it's not a detraction to his overall tool set. So he seemingly did a little bit of everything fairly well. So, I mean, that's better than most, probably where he's at in his stage. So yeah, I would say the outlook is fairly good for him latching on with another team that's looking to add some depth on their 40-man.
Yeah, I mean, he's 33 years old, so he's been around. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's been around, but he's never really stuck in the major leagues from what I can. Or last year where he played.
He hunk.
Yeah. No, yeah. The last time he played a full season of work was back in 2022. Since then, he's bounced around Cincinnati, Baltimore, Chicago, New York. So I think the Tigers just looked at it as like, you would be hard pressed to make room on the 40-man for a guy that hasn't really been a everyday player in the league for years. Especially because we did get, we've had some struggles, which we're going to talk about in the outfield. But I think we got enough depth between, Trey Cruz and a couple other guys in the outfield to where it didn't make sense to really shake things up with the roster move. But outside of that, we know that Max Clark is going to start the year in AAA, which is encouraging. I mean, he didn't make it to AAA last year. He started in AA, but obviously he'll be one step away from the major leagues now. Not yet on the 40-man, but getting everyday reps in center field at the AAA level. So that'll be something to keep an eye on to see if he does take right off like he did in Erie. We know he struggled quite a bit defensively and offensively at in spring training, but they've obviously given enough vote of confidence to still promote him to the next level. Now, what does that mean? Now, with him being the everyday center fielder, likely in AAA, does that mean more than likely that Parker Meadows will hold on to his spot? Because you would think that if Parker was going to get sent down, he would be the starting center fielder unless somebody plays the corner. But do you think that that's a preliminary sign right there?
Yeah, I mean, because here's the weird thing from the spring training as a whole, looking at all the numbers so far, it was a lot of the NRIs and 40-man guys that were producing on a much more regular basis. A lot of our regulars had a very underwhelming spring, I'll say. And again, we take bits and pieces of that with grains of salt, but the last 2.5 weeks or so, a lot of those guys, they might carry 50 or 60 at the beginning, right? They're down to they've been down to that mid to high 40s range now for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. So those guys have not really come around. Torkelson, Cole Keith kind of slowed down. A lot of regulars were hitting barely 200 or just under 200. So, and Parker had some hits late. Overall, not a great spring training. I'm not going to mince words with that. Obviously, his defense speaks for itself. There's not a hole in that game. But I think it's a combination of the fact you had other guys that just couldn't get it going this spring. And to justify sending one down, you'd have to look at justifying sending some of these other ones down for guys that are hot right now. But, obviously it's not always transferable. Some guys are hot to start, and then they jump over up north to start game one of 162, and they go cold, and vice versa. It's the nature of baseball. But I think it's going to be probably a short leash for Parker, depending on how everyone else goes, because as nice as Baez has been filling in occasionally at center field, he just is not an everyday center fielder. He doesn't have the range, doesn't have the arm capacity to make a lot of the other throws that he can, obviously, at shortstop. And it's kind of a stopgap. It's not a permanent solution. And I'm thinking we'll tease it here, and we'll go into more of who we think will make it or break it for the 26. But, if that were to be the case, I mean, I'd be looking at, McGonigal immediately for that bump up, because then Baez and Vierling could kind of share that center field duty if Parker were to go down. And I think Vierling would be a more everyday center fielder in that capacity than Baez.
Absolutely. We're gonna get to the first break, and then we're gonna talk the starting pitching rotation. Okay. All right. There were no big surprises at the starting the top five pitching the top five pitchers, obviously. Hold on. Let me see here. I had the picture up here. Kind of goes without saying, but yeah, obviously, Tarek School will take the bump on opening day, and then as it turns out, Framber Valdez will be the starter on opening day.
Yeah, the way it plays out right now, I've got it up right now. Skubal will be game with Skubal, Valdez, Flaherty for the Road Series 1, then JV Mize and Skubal in Arizona before they head home. And that would put Valdez for Friday, the Detroit's opening day, and then Verlander on Sunday Night Baseball on the new home of NBC Baseball.
Okay. All right. So I think I've been looking at some rankings. I've seen our starting pitching staff anywhere from 4 to 5 as far as the rankings for the major leagues. What are your overall feelings with the pitching staff going into the season?
The staff as a whole it's rock solid. I mean, as long as Flaherty keeps eating innings and stays healthy, we'll be good. I know, Mize really struggled the last 2 or 3 outings this spring, was not pretty at all. And I think it became a little more outwardly evident. He became, he's not one to hold his feelings in all the time. And when he gets frustrated, you see it, he kind of starts pounding his glove and he gets mad at himself. But, he had too good of a year last year for this to completely fall off the rails. So, again, just things to work on coming back out of spring training for him. But I think the depth was the one thing I thought they had the best of in all of baseball in terms of their 40-man. But injuries and no Job this year, and we don't know what's going to happen with Troy Melton. Kiter being sent down, you pretty much all you have left in the cabinet right now is Drew Anderson. So your depth behind these guys is now emphasized on their health and their success, obviously. But they're a little bit thin behind them right now. But as is right now against them, I think they're top 2-3 in the American League, and they're definitely top 5 in all of baseball going into opening day.
Absolutely. It's funny. I kind of forgot about Troy Melton. He was put on the 60. Did he put on 60 day or
60 day?
So he's going to be out for a while. Obviously the top 2. I've kept a close eye on Framber, and he looks really, really good. Flaherty is going to be kind of the wild card because I think that he has the potential to, miss some bats and really turn things around. If we can get the Flaherty anywhere near that we got in 2024, it's going to be extremely scary. I mean, he was a fringe all-star, in my opinion. As you said, Mize has been kind of shaky, but if you were ever going to have a guy in the number 5 spot, it's somebody that was an all-star last year. JV, I got to see him in person. He served up a couple, nice pitches that got deposited all over the outfield and beyond. I think it's going to take a while. I think it's going to take a while for him to get in the groove, but it'll be nice to see him make his debut back in Detroit, and just should be an interesting year. I think one of the better, the bigger surprises and most impressive things has been Drew Anderson, who actually got Framber out of trouble yesterday. But also we can't forget about Emmanuel De Jesus, who pitched some pretty important, had some pretty important at bats. We saw the exchange between him and Ohtani in the World Baseball Classic. So he's got some good experience and that he can kind of build on. And, the stage doesn't get too much bigger than that situation. So I think, in the event that we have to, revert to him early in games or, the one thing I will say about the starting pitching staff is the durability should be there. Flaherty didn't miss any outings last year. I want to say JV pitched pretty much an entire year. Framber has been an innings eater for years, and Skubal has been very durable as well. So although we have had some injuries to our younger guys, which, they got to get that out the way. Hopefully beyond that, they'll be good because they are certainly our predecessors in the future. But, the older guys are holding it down right now. They've got their TJs out the way if they needed them. And, they're thugging it out right now. So that's the starting pitching staff. I think that once again, that goes in as one of our biggest strengths is pitching, because we haven't even gotten to the bullpen. But that they're looking pretty strong as well. But let's talk about the lineup. Now you have a list up of the top 10 batting lineups. Did the Detroit Tigers make that list?
MLB.com released this morning, actually, a couple different projections, including a top 10 offensive lineup, and the Tigers, plot twist, were not in it. But that goes to the, basically a lack of almost nothing in the offseason to really fortify that. It all came, it's going to come internally. So it's hard to grade out maybe a minor league guy who hasn't made his debut yet, or it's very limited scope to make kind of projections based on mostly just spring training numbers and limited minor league numbers from last year. So, I'll read off here real quick who they had ranked here. I think to no one's surprise, they had the Dodgers number 1, the Yankees number 2, which after the WBC, Judge, I think might fall off here. Cody Bellinger didn't have a great year last year, although Ben Rice is slotted as their cleanup guy between Bellinger and Stanton. And Volpe is very volatile. Mariners number 3, no surprise there. Blue Jays 4. The A's were 5. With Rooker, McNeil, Lawrence Butler, they added Max Muncy and Nick Kurtz with Shea Langoliers, their catcher. That's and they came to our place last year, remember, and they popped us a good one. So that's they're not going to be any there are no pushovers anymore. There are no Rockies, that's for sure. The Mets are number 6, the Orioles at number 7, Phillies 8, Cubs 9, and rounding out the top 10, the almost season.
There's a little lag, but
I mean, most of these guys were, most of these teams were, they made aggressive moves in the offseason, signings and trades. Diamondbacks made a late move to get Arenado. And, thank God the Tiger Killer is no longer in the AL and Carlos Santana. But Alex Thomas had a decent, I think, for Team Italy too in the WBC. Jordan Lawler's he's got some pop. Obviously, you've got perennial all-star almost in Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll. And Gavin Moreno is a respectable catcher, so it's still a pretty decent lineup. But that NL West is just still disgusting.
Yeah, I think that Diamondbacks lineup is kind of top heavy because I mean Jordan Lawler, I think he's fresh out of the minors and he's one of their top prospects, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think that what the Tigers are kind of missing is that big bat, veteran big bat. I would say, we got Gleyber Torres, but I mean he doesn't have super crazy pop. He's a good contact guy, but when I look at it, I think that we're certainly top 15. I would think the Cubs lineup.
You can't. There's no way you can be a favorite to win your division, and you're not even top half the league in terms of offense. If that, then you better have freaking 3 starting pitcher all-stars and 3 bullpen all-stars to really lock that down on the back end. But yeah, to your point, if they added Suarez or a power hitting third baseman, I think at worst case, Diamondbacks fall down. We're number 10
for sure. I think it's a pretty valid list. I can't really argue with too much of it. My biggest concern going into the season, hitting wise, is the middle. It's the middle of our lineup. I think that the top of the lineup should be pretty strong. Whether you got like a Vierling, Torres up top, you're gonna have guys like Dingler at the Dingler, Javi, and you can even say Kevin McGonigal will be at the top of the lineup as well. It's the Torques. It's the Carpenter. Those two guys didn't have really good springs. I think Torque got his first home run in the spring just recently, the last couple of days. But you got to have the big boppers in the middle of the lineup. When you look at these other teams, they got that. Ketel Marte, Bryce Harper, Schwarber, Pete Alonso, Guerrero, Soto. Like these are bona fide run producers. Does Torkelson and Carpenter hang within that group? At their best, sure, but they can be a little spotty. Even a Brett Rooker. I mean, this is a guy that averages around 95, 100 RBIs a year. Very unsung because he plays in Sacramento now, but that's gonna be the key for us. Obviously, we pride ourselves with a little bit more balance. We like to run the bases. We have some guys that can hit for power. Riley Green, who has gotten better as the spring has progressed. He's had a much stronger ending than he had to the beginning of it of the spring. But at the end of the day, the question is going to be, how are these guys going to be more selective? Are they going to strike out less? Are they going to have more professional at bats? That's going to be important for us because we do, we kind of lean on, hitting for contact and moving runners over. We can't do that if we're striking out, especially when you don't steal bases. So So yeah, that's my biggest concern. I'm not really worried about Riley Green. I know that he was focusing on making some more contact, walking some more. So the fact that he's now starting to hit the ball out of the ballpark again, that's the Riley Green that we know anyway. So, yeah. Who has? Where do I want to go with this?
Well, we can stay with the what we think will be the 26 man for the infield. I know we've touched on with the starting rotation, and pretty much I think we know who the usual suspects are going to be for the bullpen, right? I don't know. I think the only one that's a question mark is Sawyer Gipson-Long for DeJesus, maybe. Because DeJesus is only on the 40 man, but I don't see how he doesn't break camp with them. I mean, he has been extremely good. And obviously a great showing in the WBC, and SGL was hurt almost all last year. Didn't really have that much of a decent spring training.
Is he healthy right now?
That's what I was trying to find out for SGL, but I mean, he only pitched 8 games last year. But Jansen, Finnegan, Vest, Herter, Holton, Hannafy, Bailey Horns had a good spring. I think he's fine. He's slotted in there. My only thing would be SGL or DeJesus in terms of rounding out the bullpen. I mean, and as a whole, that's in my eyes that is a rock solid and pretty well balanced bullpen with the younger guys and a couple older veterans in there holding it down.
So we got Holton. How many lefties? I know DeJesus is lefty, right?
Yeah, it's Holton, Bailey Horn. Right, because I think Herter and Hannafy are righties, and then SGL is a righty as well with Jansen, Finnegan, and Vest. So you carry 3 lefties, which would give him some more flexibility.
I think SGL is the odd man. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to lay eyes on him this spring, but
because with SGL and DeJesus, that would be a total of 14 pitchers in total of the 26. So I know that's kind of you carry one more extra pitcher at 14 or one less at 13. You carry one more, position player in that aspect. So I think that will be interesting as we get into who else we think should make it in McGonigal and what kind of flexibility and options they have in terms of guys with options, or if we're looking at possibly just letting a guy go altogether.
Yeah, I think the most confusing part is we really don't know what's going on with Trey Sweeney. Well, I think there's no way he makes the. Well, for
no,
one,
40 man. I'm ready to just be like, you know what, I don't know what other than what else did we get out of that trade from Flaherty other than him? Wasn't like one
Lorenzo.
other player, one other prospect.
They ran Lorenzo.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I think we made out well. If we had a cut bait with him, like Ronza is turning out to be a pretty decent prospect so far. So, all in all, I think that was a good trade, and Flaherty's back. And like you said, he's going to aim for like 175 innings pitched this year. So, thanks, Trey, but you're probably better off in another organization trying to crack a lineup, or at least as a util guy, because McGonigal is coming, and he is practically here.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the ESPN depth chart, he's the starting shortstop right now. So ESPN has made up their mind on what should be happening. But I think one other thing that's interesting is we held a lot of our young players out of that Rising Stars game for them to get extra time in the spring training. So I think there were reports online that there was about 4 rookies or young players in play for the opening roster. I typed out who they were. I think it was who was it? I think it was McGonigal, Max
Drew
Anderson. Well, Drew. Well, Drew's not considered young anymore.
Okay.
I'm thinking position players.
Gotcha.
I think it was McGonigal, Max Anderson. Who else? John Peck, who I don't think is going to make the. I don't think he's going to make the opening roster, but but he's a player that didn't participate in the game that probably could have.
Yeah.
Who else?
Those are all middle infielders too, with
Right.
Anderson being a second bagman.
Right. And Trey Cruz, I think I put in there too. So yeah, very, very interesting. I think that there's gonna be at least one person on that list that you're like, oh, that you weren't as, that you didn't necessarily expect to be a part of the starting roster, but due to the fact that Wenzel is having is having a terrible spring as well, between him and Meadows, flip a coin, they both look pretty, rough out there. Just the eye test, even not just looking at, you look at the stats that can be misleading. But the one thing I have seen, and Parker, I will give Parker some credit. He has gotten some hits in the last couple of days. But he's also been making a conscious effort to bunt. I can confirm he can bunt the baseball. He dragged one over he pushed one over to third base, a little too hard and a little too off the line. It moved the runner over, but he was thrown out, which is difficult to do, to throw him out. But that just kind of shows you how hard he pushed it. But so he does show the willingness to bunt if need be, and the capability of doing so. So yeah, we'll see. I really don't know. I don't like the idea of breaking camp with him and Wenzel Perez, because that could definitely be two automatic outs at the bottom of your lineup already. But I think even this depth chart is a little misleading, because Vierling is going to be starting somewhere between that center field position and that right field position. He's going to be, even if Parker, and I don't know how it will play out. But obviously Carey can play right field as well, but Vierling should be playing every day. Matter of fact, he's been our number 3 hitter, which once again, I'm not terribly thrilled about, because he's, Torque and Torque, Green, and Carpenter need to be those guys. Vierling shouldn't have to play that 3 slot, but he's been driving all the runs, and he's been hitting for power. He's been hitting to the pull side. So
he's got the best spring out of all of them by far. Damn near almost 400 this spring. I think first couple games he had home runs. I mean, he looks fully healthy. This is probably the best thing that we needed, that he was gone for 80% of the year last year. But you read my mind about Perez and Parker. I think you break with Parker, and you not really platoon, but Vierling becomes your maybe lean more center fielder and backup third baseman. You send Perez down with McGonigal, and I, dude, you were right there. I think Cruz makes it. I think if there's one that it kind of was, ooh, okay, it's him, because he can play everywhere in the outfield and center field too. So I totally see that, because I think the other guy that we were big on before they assigned him last week was Julks. Guy plays everywhere too and had some big power. So they got someone else behind him that could potentially see some intermittent time later this year for whatever reason, attrition, some of the other guys struggling. So I think you read my mind, man. Get out of my head.
Yeah. And yeah, as far as the, when we look at the guys that are, like you said, a lot of the main players have had some struggles for one reason or another. A lot of the impressive guys, like you said, are non-roster invitees. Well, outside of Vierling, of course, but Julks, Peck, Jace Young, those were your most, impressive players. And they could put some pressure on. I mean, I won't say Young can really put pressure on anybody, but I will say that there might be a short leash on Cole Keith, just because I think that McGonigal has played. I think in every facet, I think that he's better than Cole Keith right now, including defensively. But Young plays third base as well. And although he hasn't, hit for a lot of power, he's hit for a good average. This was a spring training that a better one that he needed to have, because it appeared that he was kind of pushed off that third base mark over to first. But the injury to Hyu Lee also gave him some more opportunities as well. One guy that we haven't talked about.
There's still one guy we haven't talked about yet, who is, I don't think he'll get cut, but I think there's another even wilder scenario we could throw out there, because we haven't even touched on Zach McKinstry at all, who is on this team. And we talk about McConaughey. I don't think he'll be at second. I just don't see that with Colt Keith. I think he plays left side a lot. But the other thing you could do, Perez and Parker both go down. Cruz makes it. And to your point, McConaughey makes it, because that leaves Baez and McConaughey to play a little more left side infield, and Vierling to focus more on, outfield positions, primarily center field in that aspect. So I don't see them cutting McKinstry. He didn't have by far not the worst, but I think he does. The downside would be the fact that you send Parker down. That's you're probably one of your fastest guys. McKinstry's right behind him in terms of bag stealing and base running. So you can't get rid of both of them. You would be dead last in speed and stolen bases by 1,000,000 this year if you did that.
Yeah, no, I think that McKinstry is still. I think that he makes it at least into the trade deadline, and maybe if you see something from Trey Cruz or somebody else, you feel more comfortable with it. The one person that I thought you were going to mention is Jahmai Jones. He's a battler a player that's only played about only hit it in about half the at-bats as everybody else, because he was in the World Baseball Classic, and yeah, it hasn't really been an eventful spring for him. I feel like it was his job to lose going into the spring, because he did have such a good second half of the season, but I don't know if you can just 100% lock him in. I mean, he's a guy that doesn't really have a true position outside of the corner outfield. I guess with Perez and Meadows struggling so much, there are some opportunities for him, but his numbers aren't too much better than theirs. So that could be interesting, especially with some of these younger guys hanging around and continuing to excel, especially like, for one, I wouldn't be mad at seeing him get the 26-man nod. But once again, with a short leash, with a guy like Corey, with Corey Jokes, as good as he played in the minors, and sometimes you in the spring, sometimes you see it where they get back to AAA and it's like, oh, where was this? Who was the real Corey Jokes? Like, because the same thing happened to Manuel Margot. He went on the IL after starting in the major leagues, and then all of a sudden he couldn't hit when he got to AAA after actually playing pretty well at the major league level. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things go between Jones and Jokes, because they kind of play that same role, righty power bats, but also journeymen that are kind of like 4A players. Neither one of those guys have spent a lot of time in the major league, so there's question as to whether or not, how, are they legitimate major league players, or are they guys that are just gonna show, be good in spurts? So a lot to chew there.
Younger, does Jahmai really want to stay behind those younger guys? You know what I mean? Like, it kind of like, well, if you're not going to give me the added chance and opportunities, then I'd rather look elsewhere for more a greater role of impact. But yeah, to your point, like, if some of these other guys were hitting better, I think it'd be a much clearer decision. But too many of the same corner outfield guys, minus Riley, are kind of in the same boat in that aspect. But yeah, and he's bottlenecked too, because he's a primarily crushed lefty hitter. And I think you said too the other last show, he did get some more regular bats this spring against righties and did have some pop when he came back from WBC. But again, very, very small scope from the whole spring.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little different in spring training because you don't have guys that you know are going to start for, a starter's not going to go 6 full innings. So it's going to be spotty whether you get a righty or a lefty. Um, so yeah, he's kind of pigeonholed into a certain type of role, and those guys don't tend to last long in Detroit. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they'll drop because we finished up our last spring training games, and we're headed to Colorado. So we should have um, we should have a better idea maybe at some point today who will be making the 26-man roster. But we gave you a lot to chew over. I think we gave you every scenario possible. Let's get to the final break, and we'll see what we got going on after that. All right. So, talked about a lot. We covered some things. What would you say is your biggest concern heading into the regular season right now? You're on mute.
I'd say it's going to be health from a not limited to pitching or position. It's just overall. We've had a handful of guys the last few years miss large chunks of time that have kind of not really derailed, but maybe ended some of the momentum that they had in certain parts of the year. Obviously, we've talked to death about Parker and some of these other guys. Health is going to be the issue. Some added power. I think the patience we've seen, like you well noted with Riley's taking more pitches, his on base is improving. Although we still, he's getting paid to drive in runs. So I know Torkelson was a big walk guy last year. But I mean, if you're going to hit cleanup, we really would prefer that ball to be driven with runners on, getting guys 2 bags over or scoring, in that scenario. But beggars can't be choosers. But aside from that, I think we're all just universally anticipating the inevitable announcement that McGonigal is breaking camp with the Tigers. And to see how that plays out with the platooning situation, I think it's going to create even more options for AJ and his Dr. Frankenstein mentality of who's going to hit where and play where. So that will be interesting going forward. But I think Torque, Riley, in terms of the power production, how McGonigal fits in to that the roster every day. And, I'm not even worried about the bullpen, honestly. DeJesus looked great. We did have some issues. Holton was kind of off and on, I think, the last couple months last year. He'd have great outing, poor outing, great outing, poor outing. So, and Drew Summers was trash. He pitched 2 games in spring and imploded. I think that guy doesn't even belong on a 40-man roster, frankly, in my opinion. So I think their bullpen is fantastic. Their rotation, as is, elite, top 5 in baseball. I think that's why they are definitely the favorite for the Central, albeit they do on paper lack some offensive firepower. But with McGonigal, I think that blends out that power. And then, Dingler was a silver slugger last year. So now all of a sudden you might have 5, 6 legitimate guys that can bop the ball all over the park. And then you've got your other players that can kind of do what else needs to be done to move guys over, be distractions. I think this team is going to really be a fully encompassing weapon going forward that you can't really pin them to do one thing or the other. They're going to do a lot of little things very well.
Yeah, and I touched on a little bit my biggest concern, and that's the middle of the lineup. But I think the focal point of all of it is going to be Kerry Carpenter. He had a very good end of last year, especially in the playoffs. Proved to be a very dangerous hitter. Now he hasn't really translated a lot of that into spring training. We kind of went into the spring like, hey, give him some lefty at bats, which I think he did hit a home run this spring. I think the one home run that I think he hit was against a lefty. So he's a guy that honestly, talent-wise, has the potential to be a 35, 40 home run guy. We need to see it. He was relatively healthy last year, outside of him pulling his hamstring a couple of times.
Yeah,
so that's
that was crazy. 4 times that year, which is nuts.
So yeah, this is going to be a very big year for him. He can be a very integral part of us, driving in a bunch of runs. And obviously he got platooned a lot last year with Jahmai Jones, which, Jahmai Jones is now in question a little bit. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing. Let me see. I had his stats up here. What were carries? For
spring?
Yeah.
Yeah, he 16 games, 190. His slash line was 190, 277, 262, and 539. Looks like only 11 total bases, only a couple extra base hits with that 1 home run. But, if you look at the rest of them around there, Parker 190, Torkelson 190, Carpenter 190, Wentz-Yell 158, Jahmai Jones 158. So they're kind of all right in that same.
All of our starters.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because, Cole Keith 229, McKinstry 226. Obviously, McGonigal solid 250 with a lot of games played. Max Anderson was 294. It was Vierling by far had the best overall average and on base, and Riley had probably the better slugging of the regulars that were guys that we know that are locked in. Jake Rogers, respectable spring, 231 after injuries last year. So
Tomas Nido too.
Right. It's just unfortunate that he's only going to be, he's a minor league player right now. So unless there's an injury to where we have to buy his contract this year, and heaven forbid someone else from a major league comes knocking and offers him a 26-man spot, I would imagine he's probably going to take that because he's been around for a bit. Obviously played in some high market areas like the Mets organization, and with the success,
the highest of markets.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some not just general experience; he's got quality experience in some fairly scrutinized media markets. So I would hate to lose him for that depth back there, like we've mentioned. But Rogers seems to be healthy from last year, and I think he's going to be itching to maybe get a start or two for JV in addition to, obviously he had Scooble as his boy, but Dingler's a man this year. But I would expect Rogers to maybe catch Verlander once or twice.
Yeah, I think so. That if he doesn't catch Scooble, he'll definitely catch Verlander on one of those days off. So, yeah, good to see him back hitting because he had a pretty bad year hitting wise. But all in all, very exciting. We touched on the probables coming up, so we won't reiterate that again. So by next Sunday, we'll be into the season, right? When the season?
Yeah, we'll have finished the second series, I think. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have plenty to talk about by then. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be here all season long. Let me pull this up for you. Yeah, subscribe to the channel. We'll be simulcasting on Bleachers and Speakers as well as Corner to Copa. And we still got some profiles coming for you. So be on the lookout for that to preview the players this year. We got another special guest in the building. What's her? That's a girl, right? Yeah.
Yes. That's a girl. So this is Rue, 3 years old. She's ready for some Tigers action too.
Absolutely.
She loves chasing down baseballs, and more so if they're over the fence. All right, now you see the neighbors.
He's fired up.
Yeah, she sees the dog next door. That's why. All right. You're excited too. There you go. Bat ears for everyone. Yep. She's saying go Tigers, right? Right. You got a camera.
But yeah, we'll probably I'll probably come on here and do a recording when the actual roster is announced, because there may be some surprises and some talking points as far as that's concerned. But other than that, tune in every Sunday. We got a show coming up, and signing out. Subscribe to the channel.
Peace.
Get your lick back. If a nigga owe you something, ain't no chit chat. Better stay up out the